One of my very favorite places on earth is Yellowstone. Not only is the scenery spectacular, but the wildlife is pretty good too. I've been hanging out around Yellowstone for almost 50 years. At first, I was mostly interested in still photography, but over the last 20 years or so, I've spent most of my time filming Yellowstone animals. I recently saw something I've heard about for years, an actual bison funeral. Most of us have heard that elephants have funerals, but they aren't the only animals that pay their respects to the dead. Years ago, I watched a female red fox whose 2 babies had been killed and mostly eaten by a badger come out of their den and bury the small remains of one of her kits. A few years ago, a female grizzly and her 2 cubs found a bison that had been hit and killed by a car. They came to the carcass a number of times over a few days to eat their fill. Each time before she left, the mama grizzly very carefully covered the remains of the carcass with grass. If it wasn't for the horns, you wouldn't even know a bison carcass was under there. Early one afternoon, she covered the carcass and left to go take a nap. While she was gone, a male bison came and stood over the carcass. Maybe it had known the dead bison, or maybe it just recognized one of its own was dead. Recently, a female bison in Hayden Valley died after complications of giving birth. We watched the carcass for several days, hoping it would attract bears and wolves. We never saw them, but we did see coyotes and ravens and eagles come to the carcass a number of different times. About 11:30 a.m. on the 3rd day, a herd of around 80 bison crossed the road and headed towards the carcass. Over about a 10-minute period, several of the bison, particularly males, came right up to the carcass and stood over it, even sniffing and licking a couple of times as they paid their respects. Had she been a member of this herd? Were these her brothers? Or maybe some of her boyfriends, mourning her loss? We'll never know that, but it does make you realize animals' grief is not all that different from ours. I'll never forget watching them mourn. Seriously, one of the saddest but interesting things I've ever seen. After a few minutes, the herd moved on, and then we had something new to worry about. They were heading right towards us. As we were on the edge of the road, the only thing we could do was, as the 2 rangers said, "Get in between the cars."